Welcome to Purpose. I'm your host, Corie Clark. I'm just a normal girl who decided to go for it. I created a thriving business from the ground up without sacrificing my sanity, and I believe that you can do the same. You were created on purpose, for a purpose, and I fully believe you can turn that purpose into profit. Each week, I'm going to bring you practical advice to help you live your life and grow your business on purpose. Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning into Purpose. I'm your host, Corie Clark, and I'm so glad that you're here. So each week, I'm going to be featuring a listener review. So if you haven't done that yet, be sure to leave one and subscribe to the show. This week's featured listener is Amy Ann. She left the sweetest review. Amy says, "Thank you for your transparency and for being real that making that push and putting yourself out there is super hard, but can be done. Your encouragement of creating margin, thank you. I look forward to hearing all of them. Thank you again for your heart, soul, and godly sound encouragement." Thank you so much, Amy. That was so sweet. So, you guys, make sure you leave a review and maybe you will be featured next week. I can't wait to share my guest with you guys, but real quick, if you are a female entrepreneur who's overwhelmed with all the tasks of running a business and you're wanting to do the work that's purposeful and profitable and then still allows you to spend time with your family, you have to check out my Purposeful Business Academy. So, doors actually close tomorrow, Wednesday, March 6th. So, if you're listening after the 6th, you're just going to have to get on the wait list for the next time. But right now, I'm taking in a small group of founding students. So head on over to corieclark.com/join to get signed up today. And if doors are closed, you'll be able to sign up for the wait list. All right, let's jump into this week's episode. So this week, I had the pleasure of interviewing Jill Minton. Jill is a former corporate executive turned founder of a health cafe company. And now she's obsessed with that moment of taking the leap from living ordinary to extraordinary. She shares her journey of leaving her IT consultant job, selling it all, and starting their business. She also has an amazing podcast called Learning to Leap. I absolutely loved Jill's story, and I know she's going to be inspiring to you today. All right, you guys, I'm so excited to introduce you to my new friend, Jill. And Jill reached out to me on Instagram and wanted to connect. And I'm so excited. We actually just finished an interview for her podcast. So I'll be sure to link that for you guys as well. But Jill, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me. I totally appreciate it. And I love what you're doing. So I'm a fan.
Well, Jill and I definitely have a ton in common, and we love to see people launch their dreams and take that leap of faith. And so, Jill, can you just tell us a little bit about what it is that you're doing?
Yeah. I'll kind of start back from the beginning, but
Okay.
my story really kind of starts about 11 years ago. I was working in corporate America. I was an IT consultant, worked for KPMG and Ernst & Young. I actually used to live in Irvine, actually.
Oh, crazy.
I forgot to tell you that. Yes. And way back, right out of college.
Okay.
And I traveled all the time, worked all the time, and had 2 little kids. So we got married, had our 2 little kids. I moved back to Kansas City, had our 2 little kids, and was just living the crazy life, working all the time and traveling, and had these 2 little kids. And I was just feeling this extreme fatigue. It was like pregnancy fatigue times 100. Like it was awful. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, there's something not right. And I remember finally the straw that broke the camel's back is it was a Sunday morning, early in the morning, sun was shining, and we were loading up to go to church, and church was like 5 minutes from our house. And I was sitting in the car. My husband was driving. I was not driving. And I fell asleep in the car. And I was like, there's something not right. Like I just got up. I should not be I couldn't stay awake in a 5-minute car ride. Yeah, and I'd gotten to the point where I couldn't drive. I didn't feel comfortable driving anymore with my kids in the car to my parents' house, which was like 45 minutes away, because I was afraid I'd fall asleep at the wheel. And my husband would take me to the airport. Like I couldn't really drive for extended periods because I was afraid I'd fall asleep. And I'm like, there is something not right. I'm in my 20s. I work out. I eat right. Like, this is crazy. And for a long time, I kept chalking it up to, I travel, I got kids, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, finally that Sunday morning, I sat in church and I said, God, I have to figure this out. I cannot live the rest of my life like this. Like, this is not right. And so after that day, I started going to the doctor and I'm like, I've got to figure this. I'm going to figure this out. And they ran test after test and they're like, your thyroid's fine, your blood count's fine, tested everything and it kept coming back fine. And at the same time, my dad and my sister kind of were having these other weird symptoms. And so finally, my sister's doctor was like, have you guys been tested for celiac disease? And we were like, no, we don't even know what that is. Well, turns out it's an autoimmune disease. And anytime your body's exposed to gluten, it attacks itself. And once it learns to do that, it can never unlearn to do that. So the only cure is to never eat gluten again. So my dad, my sister, my daughter, and myself, my daughter who was 5 at the time, we found out we all had it. And it's hereditary. So we got it. You have to have a parent that, or somebody that was a gene carrier, which happened to be my dad's side. Mm-hmm. And so we had to completely transform the way we were eating, which was, we had to get gluten out of our house. And I mean, I was the biggest carbaholic ever. I loved bread. I loved everything. And so, cause gluten is in barley, wheat, rye, and malt. Mm-hmm. And so, we had to get that out. And then the whole healing process was all about juicing and eating real clean, whole, healthy foods. And so we were kind of relearning how to cook and how to eat, and couldn't believe how incredible I felt. Like, once I made that transition, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much energy I have. Like, I was walking around half dead. I mean, wow. I could not keep my eyes open. I couldn't think straight. And with my job, I had to be able to think. And I was just like, I couldn't believe how good I felt. And so I was like, I've got to do something with this. I told my husband, I'm like, I've got to do something with this. I can't, like, I have this information. I've got to help other people because I see other people walking around like this. And so he was like, I'll support you, whatever you want to do. And I'm like, I would rather live in a box than not do anything. And so we downsized our life and we sold our brand new 3-car garage house and our brand new Yukon. And we moved into a tiny little 1,000-square-foot house and in Kansas City. That's tiny because you can get a lot here in Kansas City. And so we moved into this tiny little house and I needed everything fixed. And I remember move-in day and looking at that pink and green tile and just being like, bawling inside and going, what the hell am I doing? Like, what am I doing? I mean, this is how my kids are going to grow up. Like, I had this amazing career, and with expense accounts and travel and, all this stuff. And I'm like, what am I doing? And I was still working in my other job. And but I was like, you know what? There are people in this world that do not have a dirt floor, that do not have running water. Like, get over yourself. Your kids are going to be just fine. And moved into that little house and it ended up being like the best thing ever. I mean, we were all together, our family, you had no choice. We were all together. We had amazing neighbors who, a lot of them were retired teachers that had lived in their homes for a really long time. And we fixed it up and made it our own. And we ended up living in that house for 7 years, like the longest we'd ever lived in a house. And anyway, so through that whole process, when I kind of skipped over, what I wanted to do was I wanted to open a health cafe. So I kind of wanted like a healthy Starbucks was my original idea, like with tea and juice and snacks and all of this. And it morphed into a fast casual health cafe called Tea Loft here in Kansas City. And so we ended up finding a space. We worked up until right before we opened. Or I did. My husband kept his job and then later came and joined me. And so we opened our first location in 2013. And so we grew it into 4 locations, a multi-million-dollar brand, and it's been an incredible ride. Wow. And just such a journey because, who knew, who knows? I'm like, we were the same way. We're like, is this going to work? Like, what am I doing? Is anybody even, they're like, Kansas City is steak and potato towns. Is anybody going to want juice and healthy, clean whole foods? And I'm like, I don't care, but I'm going to figure it out. Yeah. And so, anyway, it's been an incredible journey. Wow. And we've even got to do some cool things. Like we fed the Kansas City Royals the last few years through the World Series. We fed all the MLB teams that have visited. And so it's just been down in the dugout, down in the clubhouse. And so it's just been a really cool, amazing experience. But it was such a leap of faith.
Oh, totally. That is amazing. Because you were not, so you said you were in the corporate world. Did you have any experience in like that sort of restaurant type industry at all?
No, we laugh
Oh
because,
my gosh.
again, I was IT consulting and
Yeah.
I think my food service experience consisted of working at Pizza Hut in high school. And so I had no clue. I mean, I don't think I had even hardly run a register before.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love it.
Before we opened, but I was like, I will figure it out. I mean, the one thing I had going for me was, if I had anything going for me, was that, in my corporate career, I was constantly in new businesses and new corporations, usually large publicly traded companies, and figuring out process. And so
Mhm.
I at least could kind of apply some of that and be like, okay, I'm going to figure out this process. Okay, I'm going to figure out this process, and then I would kind of work my way through. But we had no idea what we were doing. No idea.
Wow. Wow. That
In the
is,
beginning, we were figuring it out.
yeah.
We had no idea.
Oh my gosh, I love it. So, when
Oh,
you opened your first store, like when did you what was that moment where you're like, yeah, this is working. Like this is what
yeah.
we're going to do.
Yeah. Well, so what we did before we took the concept to the farmers market. So before I
Mhm.
left my job, I'm like, okay, let's take it to the farmers market. Let's see if really anybody's interested in this. And so we kind of got a following at the farmers market. And so I was working this corporate career. And then on the weekends we'd go to this farmers market. Like we looked like the craziest people ever.
I love it.
But so we kind of got a following. And then so that first day we opened, the paper had printed that we were opening and what we were doing. And so they people had read it, and so the first day we opened we got bombarded. I think
Wow.
there was such a need. Who knew there was
Yeah.
such a need for healthy, clean food, and we had kind of gotten a following, and so we got bombarded that first day and sold out of everything. And I was like, this is it. Like this is it. This is gonna work. It's gonna
That's
work.
so
And
amazing.
had highs and lows ever since, but where I'm like, this was right. This was the right thing to do. And so we were so grateful that, because I mean, again, you're betting the farm and you have no idea what's going to happen. And but thank God people showed up that first day.
Totally. Totally.
So then I was like, okay, this is gonna work. I think this is gonna
Oh
work.
my gosh, I love it. And it's just that feeling because like our story is a little similar, obviously a totally different industry, but when you see that things start to work, it's like this sigh of relief, even though you
Yes.
still don't have it all figured out yet.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, like this is working. Like we can do this.
Yeah, like this may be completely insane, but I think it's gonna work.
Totally.
Well, and that's kind of, I mean, so that has become like a huge passion and driver for me, is that now I launched this whole other platform called Learning to Leap, and it is about like helping people get to that point, like, okay, you can do this if you're ready. You're getting that calling and you're nervous and you don't know, like. It's all about helping people take the leap in a safe and smart way, but also just in that this is what you're meant to do way. It's like helping people find that and, work through that journey. It's like,
Totally. Totally. Because yeah, not everybody like can take that leap on their own. They need a little bit of like reassurance, like it's gonna be
yeah,
okay on the other side of this.
right, right.
That is
And if
so
there's
awesome.
some guidance and
Yeah.
advice and reassure someone to help you through and share
Yeah.
their wounds and save you some time and effort. And
I
it's
know.
like,
So what does
so
that look like for you? Like what's your service or what are you doing to help
yeah.
people?
Well, so I also have launched a podcast called Learning to Leap, and we talk through people who have taken the leap and what their journey was like, and sharing their stories, and just letting people know it doesn't always look the same, and everyone who's done it is scared to death. Like
Mhm.
everyone who's gone through it is scared, and how do you work through that? And so we've got the Learning to Leap podcast, and then on jillminton.me is my website. We have a course that's called Launch Your Leap, and it's all about how do you launch, how do you get started, what are the fundamental things you need to do. And then I've been doing these weekly challenges I just launched this, is called Warrior Week, and it's 7 days of picking one thing that you're going to master, whether it's I'm going to start a Facebook page, or I'm going to give up sugar, or whatever that one thing is.
Mhm.
It's 7 days of focused effort and working through that together on a private Facebook group, on Zoom calls, and working through that one thing for 7 days, and just to catapult and get you started and help you through whatever you're like needing to accomplish and conquer. It's spending 7 days together of just making that happen.
I love
And
it.
like
I love it.
it's been really fun. So we're gearing up, and it's called Warrior Week. But so that'll be on our website too. But we've been doing it kind of on the side.
Okay.
So that's some of the fun stuff that we do now. And then again, speaking and talking about my story, and talking about sharing other people's stories who
Mm-hmm.
have taken the leap like you did and have found your purpose and are sharing with other people how to find their purpose. Like just bringing that all together is just, again, it seems crazy and it's like, what are we doing? But it's like, gosh, it just feels like that's what, it's helping one another find what we're here to do
Yeah.
and how can you live in that space and give the world what you came to give them, give the world what you came to give it,
Yeah. Yeah.
with your talents and your interests and your passion. And like, I just think so many amazing things could be created in this world if everyone can follow and listen to that voice. That's like, this is what you're here to do,
100%. 100%. I totally agree.
Yeah, and so that's been, that's my project. We still have Tea Loft, but this is like my passion project that I am so excited about.
That is
So,
so exciting. And I love that when you can, well, and it's not even like you pivoted because like you said you still have tea left, but you have the freedom because you did that thing, that big amazing scary thing, and
mhm.
now you get to do this other big amazing scary thing and help other people do theirs. So I just love
Yeah.
like learning and hearing about people's journeys and
Oh
how
gosh.
they like the path just kind of weaves into places that you would have never even imagined. It's
Right.
beautiful. And so your
Right. I
husband
know.
works with you,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay. And
Yep.
then, so now is he helping you with this part too, or is he still like doing the tea
He
loft stuff?
Yeah, he hasn't gotten as much involved in this part.
Okay.
He does a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
not as much. Yeah, he's still doing a lot of T-Loft
Okay.
stuff, and so yeah. But eventually, I
Yeah.
think he has such a great story to tell too, and I think he could. I just think it's when and I love you guys are a husband wife team, and when husband and wife teams can share kind of how you can navigate and work together and support one another and still have a great healthy marriage
Totally.
through all this. It's like
I know, for
it can't
sure.
exist.
I know. It's like keep the
And
business
raise a
stress.
family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And raise a family. I know. Now, how many kids do you have?
We have two.
Two.
They're in
Okay.
sixth and eighth grade, a boy and
Okay.
a girl. So
Okay. So now, how old were they when you started Tea Loft?
yeah. So our daughter was in kindergarten. She was 5 or 6. She was 5 at the time. And then our son was 3.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it was
So they've
crazy.
been totally just
Oh
brought
yeah.
along the journey, and I love
They've
it
been
so
drug
much.
everywhere.
Yeah.
It used to sit when we were building out our first space. Like we didn't want to spend a lot of money because we're like, we don't know if this is gonna work, And so we built out the space ourselves. And so we laugh because our kids like watched movies in the car. It was in the winter, so we like had
Oh
the
my
car
gosh.
running in the back for like hours. Them
Oh my
watching movies
gosh.
in the car while we were inside trying to build out this space.
Hilarious.
They'd come in every once in a while and knock down a wall or something, like knock a hole in a wall, but they were like they have seen this intimately.
Oh my gosh. I love
Well,
it.
we used to laugh because, some co-moms, some friends would say, like, how are you going to do this with like your kids? Like, how are you going to get up and open the store and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you know what? There are like kids getting up before the sun and milking cows on a dairy farm somewhere in this world. Like my kids can get up and make it to the restaurant and like come, sit there and have breakfast,
Yeah.
like they're fine. So they
Yeah.
did. They got up early and came in with me and, it was good for them to
It is
see.
so good for them. I love it. I
Yeah,
love
and in the
it.
beginning, I had a lot of remorse about it,
Hmm.
and felt guilty about it. Like, what am I doing? But then I'm like, you know what? No, this is so good for them.
It is. I totally agree. I grew up with my dad and my grandfather owning businesses and going to those places, and I think it's like what shaped me into just really being like, you know what, I can do what I want. I can create my own life.
Mhm.
I can create my own business. I can create our destiny. Like I am like in charge of how this life is going to turn out. So,
Ah,
so I do think it's amazing that you brought your kids along on the journey, and they're just going to grow up like
someday,
mom and dad have their own place. Like we can too,
right,
you know?
right, and someday they'll probably talk about it in therapy.
Exactly.
No, they've been. I mean,
Oh,
so now they're in, like I said, sixth and eighth grade, and couldn't be more proud of how they have turned out so far. So,
oh,
it's been
that's
a great, crazy,
amazing.
wild ride,
That's
but wouldn't change
amazing.
it.
So, okay, so what is next? Your Warrior Week. And then do you have
Uh-huh.
anything else coming up
Yep.
exciting or?
Then we have our Launch Your Leap Academy that we're doing. And so again, it's helping people get through, you've been getting this whisper and you're not sure and it's helping people figure that out and how to take that leap and how to get to that point. So that's the other big thing that we're focused on is the Launch Your Leap Academy and this fun Warrior Weeks, which have been really incredible. And then obviously the podcast still is a huge piece of what we do. So that's been our fun projects.
I love it. So I have two questions that I am going to be asking all of my guests. So the first one is, what is one piece of advice for someone who is starting a business or about to leap? Like, what's your one piece that you think everybody needs to know?
Do your research. Like, be smart.
Love
do your
it.
research. Do a little test pilot if you can as part of your research, but definitely do your research, because I always say now, which is the time before you start, is the cheapest and easiest time to figure things out. Because once you've blown the doors off and hired employees and took out insurance or paying lease space or whatever you're doing, it becomes a whole lot harder. It's like, do your research in the beginning.
So true.
Spend some time while you have the luxury to figure things out before you.
So true. And there really is so many easy ways to do that nowadays. Even if you want to pull your audience, you can do it on your Insta stories. There is so much information at our fingertips that you really can get a lot of research done before you launch or, leap into that new life. So I love that advice. Okay. And then what does living on purpose mean to you?
That's good. Living on purpose. Gosh, I think it means taking the time to understand what's important to you and really knowing what that is and then building your life around it. Like Stephen Covey always talks about, write your eulogy at your funeral. And that's kind of your navigation map. And it's like, okay, what do you want out of this life and what do you want to get? And take the time periodically, because it can change, but most of the time it probably comes back to the fundamentals. But what do you want it to look like? And then living according to that, building something purposefully building what you really want to get out of this life. Because it's so easy to get caught up in the bright, shiny objects and be like, I want this and I want that and I want this. But it's like, wait a minute. What are you going to sacrifice to get all of that? You're going to sacrifice your family or, in your season of life, like our kids aren't home too much longer, really, in the grand scheme of things. And it's like, I'm very well aware that the next 5 years is my family's going to be home. And then that's it for all of us as a unit, under one house. And so knowing that and knowing, okay, what do I want to get out of that? And that's my purpose, knowing what that is. And then building according to it.
Exactly. I love
it. As entrepreneurs, it's so easy to chase the bright, shiny squirrel.
It is. I know. I was just telling Ryan and my integrator yesterday, I was like, you guys have to tell me, stop it, Corie. That is a shiny object. Leave it alone.
Keep me in control.
I'm giving you guys full permission to just tell me to knock it off. I love that. Okay. So, where can everybody find you?
Yeah. I'm most active on Instagram.
Okay.
So it's Jill, Jill_Minton, Minton.
Okay.
And then my website is jillminton.me. So JILLMINTON.me.
Okay.
And
awesome.
That's also where everything's at. But,
and I'll link it in the show notes and
perfect.
And the details of the show and stuff. So exciting.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It was really so good to get to know you better and encourage my listeners to leap and go for it and just see where the road leads.
Find their purpose. I love it. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been so great.
All right. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening, you guys. You can find all of Jill's info in my show notes, as well as a link to the Purposeful Business Academy, which closes tomorrow. So go to CorieClark.com/join to become one of my founding students. And if you're looking for the show notes, you can find them at CorieClark.com/9. Have the best week, you guys, and I'll see you right here next week with a brand new episode to inspire you to live your life and grow your business on purpose.